My name is Nils Kleemann, CTO in Europe of Nokia. And I want to talk about a little bit where we are with 5G. What are especially success factors to monetize 5G? Give a lot of references, data points from other players, other markets, where they successfully have been able to monetize 5G, the trends, what are the factors? And then want to close off with a little bit of an outlook, what is coming from a technology perspective with 5G Advanced and 6G. So 3 years now in 5G, where are we? What was the promise of 5G? And let me start with this one. 3 main areas. Of course, it has to fit to serve the demand of future requirements of the market in terms of capacity, in terms of also special service quality, and of course much more speed and more capacity. The second thing was of course efficiency. We need to get the costs down. So especially nowadays sustainability high on the agenda. So energy efficiency, spectrum efficiency, to squeeze more bits through the air. And then of course entering the stage into the cloud, into the platform play, software-driven, scalable and flexible. And then the third thing, opening up for new revenue streams, enterprise, that's why we talk about URLC, to also go into something which is quite prominent and getting more prominent, fixed wireless access, I will talk about this later, up to then even new things like IoT, RedCap, reduced capability, new sort of efficient IoT sort of air interfaces. So where are we in these promises? Just a quick recap. Capacity, absolutely. 5G gave us this centimeter wave sort of spectrum, so 50 to 80% more capacity to the operators. It got more speed. So as of latest open signal numbers, a 5G user is having 2 to 6 times higher speeds than with 4G. This is more or less the average globally. And then of course on the efficiency side, starting with the energy efficiency here, we know that in the comparable bands, we made tests and proof of concept here, that of course 5G is up to 37% more energy efficient in the FDD bands than 4G, even with lower load. As well as of course it helps to make it easy for the operators with the NSA to even use the existing grid and existing sites of the operators, because 5G came up with new technologies like massive MIMO and beamforming, so that you don't, because it's always a nightmare for the operators to build a new site. So reuse of the existing sites, as well as of course cloud automation to go into this. And then new revenue streams, fixed wireless access, very, very prominent. And then enterprise, we see we work a lot together with our customers on this enterprise topic. So this is taking up very, very much growing market here. Right. So when we talk now about what are the success factors in terms of monetization, of course, big investments, what is the return here? And we can say that perhaps just quickly before I do that, where are we with the SA? Is that we have now 45 nowadays launches of SA standalone. More than 100 are working on this one. You see mostly in Europe and in Asia on the left side. So the dark red ones are showing what is already launched, and the light red ones are the ones then showing which is planned. Various motivations for SA. Some very specific cases like greenfields, like Dish, or operators who want to really put an overlay there, like Reliance Jio in India, or a nationwide coverage, T-Mobile in the US. I would say the most at the moment motivations and what we see implemented in terms of use cases for SA is enterprise. As you can imagine, much more cost efficient rather than going NSA, because you also need to launch 4G for this. And then of course fixed wireless access. fixed wireless access with 5G now really a fiber-like performance. That's why it makes it so prominent and is really a good alternative and option versus fiber to the home, for instance. But again, what I wanted to say is, what are the success factors? And more or less you can say there are three main success factors we can say. One is the 5G take rate. So means how much subscribers of your customer base of an operator are on 5G plans now. The other thing is, of course, the 5G availability. So how much of your time is an end user able to use and get 5G services. And the third one is, of course, as we can all imagine, the price schemes, price tariffs. I talk about this in a minute. So as an example, here GSMA made up a very nice assessment, and I'll walk you through this very quickly here. So they looked into what are these, let's say, top 8 quite mature markets already with 5G. And they selected the ones, as you can see on the bottom, and they took now this 5G launch date as a reference of the ARPU level. So they took it as a reference 1, and then they looked 3 years behind. So what was the ARPU development from 3 years behind up to this launch of 5G? And of course we know this, the ARPU was heavily dropping from 1.11 down to this reference of 1 in the middle. And then they looked, okay, now 3 years in 5G, how was the ARPU development in these markets? And you see, at least it reversed the whole trend of an ARPU drop. Of course, not to a level where you say it's sufficient. Of course, we want to have, as an industry, 20, 30, 40% growth rates. But we are working on this one, and I'm quite confident. So you see here on the bottom diagram, then here, the black ones. This is what, on the left side of the reference, what was it dropping before 5G. And then the red one, the bars showing then here how it was with 5G after 3 years. You see from these 8 markets, at least 6 markets, they have been reversing the trend successfully and even to the positive. And in Europe, like in these examples, UK and Germany, we are still not there, we reversed, but of course we still need to work on this. There's another data point, because I say these 2 parameters, 5G take rate and 5G availability. For instance, in Korea, roughly 50% of the time the users can enjoy 5G already. In the US, it's 31%. There's also very nice statistics from OpenSignal here. So it's really eating very much into influencing the ARPU monetization level. Of course, as I said, still missing the very big killer applications. Also other aspects like GDP in the markets, like inflation rates, of course, also are eating into the affordability of 5G services, etc. But I think it's a proof point. These 2 things for sure are very, very relevant. Talking about the pricing tariffs, Bell Labs has done a nice study about what do they see in terms of pricing tariffs. Nearly 2/3 of the operators still are doing no differentiation between 5G and 4G, more or less selling this as another service with the same buckets. So we see, or they saw in this study very clearly, those which are pricing 5G separately saw very positive impact upwards on the ARPU. And also interesting was the finding that if they looked into the various markets, the competitors, all the CSPs, more or less were fighting with the same parameters and levers. Usually these are the data packages, perhaps one unlimited, slight bundlings perhaps, but no one really was doing a big differentiation, for instance, on the pricing. And about the 30% take rate I talked already about. So this one shows a couple of options of pricing tariffs. On the left side, the one I was talking about, this no differentiation between 5G and 4G, those which are usually not so successful in terms of monetizing. More people are going on to the right. One is where they at least charge 5G as a premium. And again, a 5G user is having much more speed, and we also know that a 5G user is eating more data which of course gives an opportunity to monetize this accordingly. Many operators now are at least starting with adding more levers and parameters to this one, not only the data packages, but also even things like latency or speed-based plans. And of course, we can all agree that certainly the way should go to the very right side, really then to offer things like a dad's package or a mum's package or home package or something like this. Very, very tailored, of course, to the end user's requirements. Because, I mean, if we compare us with the web scalers are putting a lot of efforts into understanding what is the demand, and they are tailoring this very much. And of course, we as an industry in telco, we should do certainly this in the same way. So what Bell Labs then, so perhaps some examples here. So it's not just out of the blue what I'm saying here. Of course, beside family package, international roaming packages, this all exists. But of course, they started now with sport bundlings, with social media bundlings, social network gaming, of course, always has to be in there. Very, very famous for the youngsters and willing to pay a lot of money for this one. So this, of course, is just showing some examples. So what Bell Labs then said, okay, what could be perhaps a framework for making more money out of 5G? And for sure, it's not only waiting for one next big killer application. Certainly, it has to be looked at with a more holistic way. So they talk about three main areas. One is, of course, the network transformation. It's about business models, new ways, especially when you talk about enterprise. And it's about also building up a new partnership and ecosystem. We'll show some examples later on. So you can divide it more or less into 5 big pillars of such a potential 5G monetization framework. And the first 2 ones is, of course, quite familiar. I think a no-brainer, of course. It's cost saving, implement cost optimization. I talked already about the platform idea, about more automation, and about, yeah, of course, energy saving, which costs a lot of money nowadays. And of course, the consumer, I talked about fixed wireless access, come to this in a second, where someone is very successfully launching this. I could imagine for Greece, this is also very interesting. Then, of course, actively also moving 4G subscribers towards 5G. I said 5G subscribers having more speed, more data consumption, a big opportunity to monetize this also, but of course needs to be actively pushed for that. And of course the other 3 streams here, one is then the enterprise business, of course a big growing area, still small, but we see a lot of pull even now from big companies now. We see mostly now campus networks being deployed. Now this is moving more and more towards also the macro networks, where CSPs can leverage their assets, especially in rural, suburban areas where the networks perhaps are not fully loaded yet. With this, of course, comes automatically building up an ecosystem. This is what operators certainly cannot do all themselves anymore. You need to work, especially in the enterprise game here, with all these integrators for these specific industry markets and segments, as well as also collaborating with the web scalers. Sometimes they are competitors, sometimes they are friends and partners. And of course, then last but not least, the whole topic of data monetization. There's so much data information in the networks, which can be used then internally to exactly know what I said, tailor then a pricing tariff. And on the other side, also to expose this to the developers and really making... Today, if you have a developer who needs an information from the network, where is he going to? Where can he include this data information into his application code, into his software code? Very, very difficult. So this exposure of APIs is very important. Some examples, fixed wireless access, very, very prominent. I mentioned it now several times. T-Mobile US, you see some numbers here. Of course, it's a big country, I know. But more than 4 million new subscribers, over $2 billion of US dollars extra revenue. This even counts for, is the necessary return you need for these investments here. But also needs to be said, they're not just blindly rolling this fixed wireless access service out there. So So they're very targeted, very picky, where they choose, okay, here's an area where we want to roll out and offer fixed wireless access. This is usually to the underserved, or perhaps where there's only one option, where the consumers, for instance, are really stuck, have no other option. And of course, if you see on the bottom left side also the reason why consumers like to use this, because it's another option. Usually it's cheaper for the service and performance you get with fixed wireless access, perhaps versus the alternative they have today. And other, of course, price mechanisms you can enter this here. So very, very prominent. There's even more information what T-Mobile is sharing here publicly with reports. So, of course, something to think about. Cost saving, well, of course, this is what we are doing since years. We have to get more and more the costs down. It's the platform idea. So where we are then on the top side, you see the demand vectors here. So we are not only there then as an industry to serve the consumers, we also need to think about enterprise, industry, even the metaverse, the next big thing. So we need to build networks which are scalable, where you can throw all these future demands into this one. So platform idea, if it's an IP optics, scalable platform, or is it for exposure automation and an NWDAF platform, for instance, where you can run all sorts of analytics on it. Platform idea, the same like the web scalers are doing today. Second big pillar, energy, whole toolbox, starting with more efficient hardware, then moving actively from 4G to 5G technologies. As I said, it's much more energy efficient. Software features, which are switching off certain elements which are not used or not needed because there's no capacity demand. And up to also how we plan these networks, up to, of course, operational things, automation, analytics, etc. So, of course, a lot of talking points we'll be more than happy to discuss in more detail. Enterprise, I mentioned, of course, a lot of segments, untapped, usually. Me personally, I'm not an expert on mining or something. That's why we need, of course, all the partners, etc. They, of course, have also different requirements. When you think about the networks, much more automation is needed here. They cannot afford or don't want to afford a whole team of 40 headcounts or people running this. They want to have a partner who runs this for them. Much more resiliency, etc. But partnering is a big, big topic. And I want to show here some examples here where this industry has already proven that it works. There are really big, big money in this one here. On the left side, for instance, if it's a wind farm, or if it's a mining where operators are working together very closely, where the expertise comes from these partners, up to in the middle, as you can see, of course, leveraging also web scalers for certain, cloud hosting, running certain analytics over there, or AST, non-terrestrial network, which is now partnering with all of this to complement all these areas from the space, from the low Earth orbit, then here for these underserved areas of the network, up to public safety, even daily problems, of course, like you were suffering in Greece here, like for wildfire detection or natural disaster detections. A lot of assets are out there for grabbing and use these assets for these sort of use cases. So I'm nearly done. I know I'm running out of time. So analytics, of course, I talked about this already. I see analytics two ways. As I said, one part is on the left side, this whole insights. As the web scalers are experts already, we need to have much more insights. What's cooking in the network? What are the UEs experiencing in the network? What sort of service? Where are the bottlenecks in the network? And also, what is the service quality and experience nowadays? Only then this can be monetized also internally, because then you know exactly how you can really build a new tariff which is attractive, where you can, of course, increase the monetization or improve the service quality, or even where you know where to invest the money. So this internal insight, of course, is very, very necessary and important. On the right side, you see this whole topic of exposure. So this is where even there are now in GSMA or Camara, these are, of course, all organizations which are driving this now. As I said, where you pull out information from the network with open northbound interfaces, and then you put this on a platform and offer this then with a software developer kit towards the developer community. And then, of course, it's a question of the business model, of the price levels where you can really monetize it. So not only towards the end users, if it's enterprise or consumers, but also towards the developer community. So with this, perhaps very quickly, I want to close one of the last, last slide. Quick outlook, of course, what is the next big thing we see coming? It's now the metaverse, 5G advanced, standardization is already running in release 18-19. So a lot of new things are coming to support these VR, virtual reality sort of use cases, or augmented realities, these glasses then complementing your view with some digital information. So things like latency, L4S, low loss, low latency sort of mechanisms important. New technologies like RedCap, reduced capability, because we don't need to shoot with a whole radio 5G interface on such a glass. We need just a limited set of this radio interface. And also 6G coming up with new sort of use cases like positioning. So we are not reliant anymore about for GPS, for instance. We can then really use, especially interesting for manufacturing environments, down to a 10 centimeter sort of accuracy, use this radio network, even up as a sensor. I mean, these are radio waves. If they are reflecting also somewhere coming back, where you can also use these mobile networks, of course, then for sensing, even for Wi-Fi, we have this already, where you can at least recognize, is there still movement? Interesting if you have elderly people at home alone, you see, okay, since 2 days there was no movement anymore. So think about this, a lot of use cases which can be monetized, etc., etc. So I want to summarize, there is, what's the promise? The promise of 5G. I believe it delivered. Of course, now we need to think about these three parameters: 5G availability, 5G take-up, and the right price mechanism, of course. I brought a lot of examples about the tariff plans. I came up with this 5G monetization framework, which, of course, incorporates many, many aspects worth to talk about. Let us know. And, of course, SA is also running, is now in this big rollout in our industry. Last word about Nokia. We are here to help you. More than 1,000 people we have here in Greece. Nearly 1,000 people are in R&D in all sorts of areas. If it's fixed networks, if it's mobile networks, or if it's even in the core and network services side. So let us know. As I said, I hope I gave you a lot of room of thoughts. A lot of areas to think about. I'm also here the whole day. Let me know. Happy to discuss with you offline. Thank you very much.
So you will be here all day. So you're staying with us. So if someone wants to talk about something, he can come up to you in the break. Oh, okay, fine. I will keep the previous one slide that you said with all the 5G, 6G and stuff like that. But I think what you were saying is that 5G SA is very important in order to be the basis for...
Especially it's the basis. If you want to launch things like RedCap in the future, you need SA. It's only working on 5G.
It's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. That's why I'm asking. Thanks very much.
Thank you.